By some estimates, up to 80% of EHR data is logged inside clinical notes. In general, to be used in research, those clinical notes need to be de-identified. This is to remove information that may directly link or identify a single patient. Welcome, my name is Jose Posada. I'm a senior clinical data scientist at the Stanford Center for Biomedical Informatics Research and Stanford Healthcare Technology and Digital Solutions. In this presentation, I will be showing you Tide, an open source, cloud-based text identification pipeline capable of processing 100 million clinical notes in a matter of hours. This tool will be available for you as a collaborator in the Odyssey community, hopefully contributing in accelerating research that use clinical notes and unstructured data across network studies. At Stanford, we're committed to protecting patient privacy. When John comes to one of our hospitals, he trusts us with all his personal information, such as email, social security, phone number, etc. All this information is routinely used as part of the care we provide for him. However, in most of the research, this information is not really needed. Such is the need to remove that identifiable information from the data. In the United States, that is made very clear by the HIPAA privacy rule. This rule specifies a method called safe harbor when we need to remove 18 identifiers that could uniquely identify a person. These are names, addresses, medical record numbers, social security numbers, among others. However, the gold standard way to de-identify clinical notes is actually by a manual process that is time-consuming and very expensive. But if we have a cohort of patients that are the thousands of patients, this process is not really feasible and becomes very intractable. And if we want to embrace all the current advances in AI and in NLP that are going now, we really need to be able to de-identify clinical notes at scale so we can use these wonderful strategies. However, we really need a platform that can do this at scale, and that is what Tide is focusing on. So what do we do to identify clinical note? Here we have an example with a typical identifiable information written in. Here we have John Smith, the information of him is in red, and some provider information is in orange. Then we really need to try to find that information and remove it. So what is the traditional way? The traditional way is to get these identifiers and using a mask. Just using these brackets and specifying this is a name, this is an address, this is a location. However, no pipeline is perfect. And why then can happen? Can happen that if you happen to leak something that is shown here in red, it's very easy to identify the information that is leaked. So what we can do, instead of just replacing with these brackets, what we can do is trying to replace with credible information. This information is information that looks like any other information there, and it's credible, it's a surrogate, and this technique is called hidden in plain sight. So instead of replacing with brackets name, we replace with a name that is credible and that looks like any other one. And here we have leaking information in purple, and we can see that information in purple looks like all the other information we replace using the surrogates. And that is what this technique is called hidden in plain sight, because the information that was leaked is hidden among all the other information that is actually fake that we produce as surrogates. Here we can see a comparison of all of them. Now, how are we doing with Tide? What we do with Tide is we start with the CDM node, and we are using the version 5.3.1, and we have this list of all known PHI information that is routinely collected as part of the patient care. Then we launch several algorithms in parallel. The first one is a name entity recognition. We are using Stanford Core NLP that is not training clinical nodes, that was shown that has really good performance on these ones. And we launch a set of regular expressions to find the PHI we know, and a set of regular expressions to find common patterns such as dates. Then, if the finding is a name or is a location, we use a database constructed out of public resources, such as Social Security Administration names, such as lists of addresses in the United States, to replace the names and locations we find with credible surrogates. Then we use generic replacements. For example, if we find an email, we replace like example at example.com. And we use a process called jitter by date. We use shift by a fixed amount those dates so we can preserve the patient timeline without revealing the actual date for the patient. This tutoring is specifically targeted for internal Stanford use. Then we reconstruct the node table, and we have a fully de-identified node table that actually looks like the real deal. Then, why we're using hidden in plain sight? Here we have a really recent research that uses malicious actor with a lot of knowledge. What is a lot of knowledge? These are physicians that really know the system where these nodes were written. So they have spatial awareness, geographical awareness, knowledge. They have Google, and they really want to identify these nodes. And even in this very terrible use case, this technique is showing a lot of resilience to actually hide patient information. Thus, we can see that this technique really increased privacy of the patient. Now, how are we knowing that we're doing a good job or not? So here we focus on an initial evaluation when we are actually going through a manual review process to only focus on false negatives. So this is possible leakage of information. We did this with a set of 3 engineers that went through the nodes. They know these data sets. So this is sort of an informal evaluation that helps us assess whether we're actually leaking information. What we cannot evaluate here is actually false positive, which we have, but we don't have a way to evaluate them right now. But from the privacy perspective, we really want to strive not to have any false negative, such leakage. So this is a good first step we did, and we are content with what we did. But we really want to move to a full evaluation. And why is that? Because the publicly available resources out there assume that you have a clinical node. That is a resource that contains a lot of information, but you don't have all the common information from the patient out there to identify it inside the clinical node. So that is a very unrealistic scenario. So what we want to do is do an evaluation in a realistic scenario when you have access to all that commonly, routinely captured information along with the clinical node and measure how well you are doing. For that process, we are collecting a set of nodes at Stanford. And what makes us different, we want also to release this as an open source for the GitHub community. And we are really striving to make this as a fast and low-cost process capable of identifying 100 million clinical nodes in less than 7 hours. We want to thank you, Dr. Nigan, Dr. Somali, and Wen Chen, which is the main software developer, which is making all this possible. And we really want to encourage the community to embrace this and to use it so you can expand the use of clinical nodes in your research and in the network studies. So thank you very much. Thank you all the Odyssey community and the working group for making all this possible. Thank you very much.
The preceding program is copyrighted by the Board of Trustees of the Leland Stanford Junior University. Please visit us at med.stanford.edu.